percentage. So the value of A is 20, B is 40, C is 60, D is 80 and A is 100. The first question is A is what percent of B? So we have to compare A in terms of B. So the basic formula is A over B into 100. So which will give me the value of A as 20 over 40 into 100, which is 1 by 2. 20 by 40 is 1 by 2. It's a 50%. Second question is B is what percent of A? So now we have to compare B in terms of A. So it's a B over A into 100, which will give me 40 over 20 into 100. So that's a 200%. Third question is A is how much percent less than B? A कितना छोटा है in comparison with B? So it has to be a B minus A divided by. Comparison किससे करना है? B से. So divided by B into 100. So it's a 40 minus 20, which is 20 divided by 40 into 100. That's a 50%. Next, B is how much more than A? B is how much percent more than A? So B minus A divided by the denominator has to be A into 100. So which will give me 20 over 20 multiplied by 100. It's a 100%. So let's take few more examples to clear the doubts. But I want you to pause the video and solve these questions before me. A is what percent of C? A is what percent of C? C is what percent of A? A is how much percent less than C? So it's a C minus A divided by C into 100. C is how much percent more than A? So it has to be a C minus A divided by A into 100. So I hope you are clear with the formula. Let's solve this. A is what percent of C? 20 over 60. 1 by 3. 1 by 3 is 33.33%. C by A, 60 over 20. So it's a 300%. C minus A, 40 over 60 is 66.66%. More than A, 40 over 20, that's a 200%. Let's take few more example. C is what percent of D? First, C over D into 100. C is what percent of C? It's simply C over C into 100. B is how much percent less than E? Is how much percent less than E? It has to be E minus B divided by E into 100. E is how much percent more than B? So it has to be E minus B divided by B into 100. Let's solve this. C over D, that is 60 over 80. 3 by 4. 3 by 4 is 75%. C by C, obviously 100%. E minus B. So it's a 100 minus 40. 60 over 100. It's a 60%. E minus B, that is 60 over 40. It's a 150%. So I hope you are clear with all these formulas. Okay, so let's take one example. One more example. 40% of C. Now 40% of C. There's a difference between question number 1 and question number 2. 40% of C is nothing but 40 divided by 100 into C, which comes out to be 40% of C is 24, as we have learned in previous videos. 40 is what percent of C? 40 is what percent of C? So it's a 40 divided by 60 into 100. It's a 2 by 3, and 2 by 3 is 66.66%. So this is the difference between 40% of C. 40 is what percent of C. In the second example, we have to compare 40 with respect to C. And in the first example, we have to find 40% of C is what. Let's take one good example. Salary of X is rupees 200. Salary of Y is rupees 300. The first question says salary of X is what percent of Y. In the previous examples, we have learned A is what percent of B. Here, X is what percent of Y. So it's simply X upon Y into 100. So salary is 200 divided by 300 into 100, which comes out to be 2 by 3. That is a 66.66%. Salary of Y is what percent of X? 300 over 200, 150%. Salary of X is what percent less than that of Y? Salary of X is what percent less than that of Y. So it's to Y minus 6 in the numerator. Denominator, it's a Y into 100. So 300 minus 200, 100 over 300 is 33.33%. Salary of Y is what percent more than X? Okay, so it's a Y minus X divided by X into 100, which will give me 300 minus 200, 100 over 200. It's a 50%. So again, you can note all this formula. X is what percent of Y? X upon Y. Y is what percent of X? Y by X. X is what percent less than that of Y? Y minus X upon Y. And Y is what percent more than X? Y minus X divided by X into 100. Okay. Now comes similar questions. M is 80% of N. N is what percent of M? The easy way to solve such types of question, you have to assume the value of M or N. M is 80% of N. So compare किससे हो रहा है? N से. Let's take N equal to 100. So what is the value of M? M is 80% of M. So M is 80. Now read the second part. N is what percent of M? So it's a simply N upon M into 100. 100 over 80 is 5 by 4. 5 by 4 is 125%. Let's take one more example. A is 20% more than B. B is what percent less than A? A is 20% more than B. So comparison ka base B hai. Let's assume B as 100. So A comes out to be a 120. Okay. Now let's solve the rest of the question. B is what percent less than A? So it has to be A minus B divided by A into 100. 120 minus 100, 20 over 120, which is 20 over 120 into 100. It's a 1 by 6. And 1 by 6, I know it's 16.66%. Third question. A is 20% less than B. B is what percent more than A? Okay, A is 20% less than B. So if I assume B as 100, A 20% less, so A is 80. B is what percent more than A? The formula has to be B minus A divided by A into 100. So which will give me 100 minus 80? 20 over 80 into 100. 1 by 4. 1 by 4 is 25%. Next example. A is 33.33% more than B. B is what percent less than A? Now, choice is mine. I can assume B as 100 or a multiple of 3. Similarly, if I look at 33.33%, it's a 1 by 3. To ease my calculation, I am going to assume B as a multiple of 3. So let's assume B as 300. So A has to be 4 by 3 of B. So A comes out to be a 400. B 300, A 400. A is 33.33% more than B. Question is B is what percent less than A? So it has to be A minus B divided by A into 100. So 400 minus 300, 100 over 400. 1 by 4, 100 over 400. It's a 1 by 4 and 1 by 4 is 25%. Next example, A is 50% less than B. B is what percent more than A? Similar example, A is 50% less than B. B 100, A 50. B is what percent more than A? So it's a B minus A upon A into 100. So 50 over 50 is 100%. Let's take the last example. A is 70% less than B. B is what percent more than A? B 100. A is 70% less than. So A has to be a 30. B is what percent more than A? So simply B minus A over A into 100. So that's a 70 over 30 into 100. 7 by 3 is 266.66%. So